She told me to stop parking on the street in front of my own house because it made the neighborhood look trashy. So I parked in my driveway instead, which happens to be exactly 4 feet too short to fit a car without blocking the public sidewalk. 3 weeks later, after she called the city on me twice, received a formal warning herself for filing frivolous complaints, and got a $180 ticket for parking too close to a fire hydrant, she finally stopped leaving notes on my windshield. Sometimes the best way to deal with someone who invents rules is to follow the actual rules so precisely that they realize they never understood them in the first place. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I am 34 years old. I work as a commercial refrigeration technician for a mid-sized HVAC company that services restaurants and grocery stores across the Denver metro area. I have been doing this for 12 years, the last 5 as a senior tech, which means I am the one they send when a walk-in freezer goes down at 2 a.m. and someone needs to diagnose a compressor failure in the dark while standing in -10-degree air. It pays well. It keeps me in decent shape from hauling equipment, and it has taught me to read technical manuals, code requirements, and safety regulations with the kind of attention to detail that most people reserve for contracts they are about to sign. I am also the kind of person who does not care much about appearances. I drive a 2015 Ford F-150 with toolboxes in the bed and company decals on the doors. I wear Carhartt jackets and work boots even on weekends. My front lawn gets mowed when it needs it. Not on a schedule. I am not messy. I am not a slob. I just have a very functional approach to life that does not include obsessing over curb appeal, which is why when I bought my house in Parkside Meadows 4 years ago, I did not think twice about the fact that there was no HOA. The neighborhood is older, built in the early 1990s, mostly one-story ranches and split levels on quarter-acre lots, mature trees, cracked sidewalks, the kind of place where people mind their own business and everyone waves when they drive past. No covenants, no architectural review boards, no monthly fees, just a regular neighborhood in unincorporated Jefferson County, where the only rules are city codes and common sense. Or at least, that is what I thought. The problem is that some people do not need an HOA to act like one exists. They appoint themselves as the guardians of neighborhood standards. They decide what is acceptable and what is not, and they enforce those decisions through passive aggression, confrontation, and an unshakable belief that their preferences are universal truths. Her name was Brenda, late 50s, divorced, worked part-time doing medical billing from home. She lived 3 houses down from me in a pale yellow split level with shutters that matched the trim and a lawn that looked like it had been installed by a golf course maintenance crew. Every edge crisp, every flower bed mulched to regulation depth, every seasonal decoration deployed exactly on schedule and removed the day after the holiday ended. I met her the week I moved in. She came walking down the sidewalk with a fruit basket and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, handing me the basket. "I am Brenda. I have lived here for 16 years. If you need anything, or if you have any questions about how things work around here, just let me know." "Thanks," I said, taking the basket. "I am Ryan, just moved from Aurora, excited to be here. What do you do for work?" she asked, glancing at my truck parked in the driveway. "Commercial refrigeration, HVAC systems, walk-in coolers, that kind of thing." She nodded slowly, and I saw her eyes linger on the company decal, the toolboxes, the slightly dented rear bumper from where I had backed into a loading dock the previous year. "Well," she said, "I am sure you will fit right in. We are a quiet street. People take care of their homes, very family-friendly." There was something in the way she said it, a subtle emphasis on take care of their homes, that made me think this was not just small talk. But I smiled, thanked her again, and went back to unloading boxes. For the first 6 months, everything was fine. I parked my truck on the street in front of my house most days. My driveway is narrow, maybe 9 feet wide, and only about 16 feet deep before it hits the garage door. My truck is a crew cab long bed, just over 22 feet from bumper to bumper. If I pull it all the way into the driveway, the front bumper is inside the garage threshold, and the tailgate hangs 4 feet past the sidewalk into the public right-of-way, so I parked on the street. Everyone does. The street is wide enough. There are no parking restrictions. It is legal, normal, and completely unremarkable. Until Brenda decided it was not. The first note appeared on a Tuesday morning in late October. I was heading out to a service call at 6 a.m., still half asleep. Coffee in hand, I got to my truck and saw a folded piece of yellow paper tucked under the driver's side windshield wiper. I pulled it out and unfolded it. Handwritten in neat cursive, "Please park in your driveway. Street parking makes the neighborhood look cluttered." Thank you for being considerate. No signature, no name. Just an assumption that I would know who wrote it, and comply immediately. I looked up and down the street. There were 4 other vehicles parked on the street within view. A Honda Accord 2 houses down, a Chevy Silverado across the street, a minivan in front of the corner house. Nobody had notes on their windshields. I crumpled the paper and tossed it in my truck, then drove to work. The second note appeared 3 days later. Same yellow paper, same handwriting. Your truck is still on the street. This is inconsiderate to your neighbors. Please use your driveway. This time, I kept the note. I also started paying attention. Over the next week, I noticed Brenda walking past my house multiple times a day. Not just walking her dog, which she did not have. Not just getting mail, which she collected once a day like everyone else. She was making deliberate loops past my property, glancing at my truck, at my lawn, at my garbage cans on trash day. The third note was different. It came with a threat. This is your final warning, park in your driveway, or I will report you to the city for violating parking ordinances. This is not a parking lot. I sat in my truck reading it, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, exactly, something colder, more calculated. I pulled out my phone and searched Jefferson County parking codes, residential streets. On street parking regulations, I read through the entire municipal code section. There was nothing prohibiting what I was doing, no time limits, no permit requirements, no restrictions except within 15 feet of a fire hydrant, within 20 feet of a crosswalk, and blocking driveways or mailboxes. I was doing none of those things. I was parked legally in front of my own house on a public street. But I was also curious. I walked down to Brenda's house that evening and knocked on her door. She answered with a dish towel in her hands, surprise on her face that quickly shifted to something more guarded. "Ryan," she said, "what can I do for you?" I held up the note. "Did you write this?" She glanced at it, then back at me. "I did, and I meant every word. Your truck is an eyesore on this street. It is legally parked," I said evenly. "There is no ordinance against street parking." "It does not matter," she said. "It looks bad. You have a driveway. Use it." "My driveway is too short," I explained. "If I park in it, my truck blocks the sidewalk. That actually is a code violation." She crossed her arms. "Then park it in the garage. The garage is full of tools and equipment for my job. Then get a smaller vehicle." I stared at her for a long moment. "You are asking me to buy a different truck because you do not like looking at mine. I am asking you to be a considerate neighbor," she said. "Everyone else on this street manages to park in their driveways. Why can you not?" "Because my truck does not fit," I said slowly, like I was explaining something to a child. "And because I am parked legally." Her expression hardened. "Fine. If you will not be reasonable, I will take this up with the city." "Go ahead," I said, and walked back to my house. That night, I did more research. I pulled up the city code section on driveway parking, section 18-157, obstruction of sidewalks clear as day. No vehicle shall be parked in a manner that obstructs pedestrian access on any public sidewalk. I measured my driveway the next morning, 16 feet, 3 inches from the sidewalk to the garage door. My truck, 22 feet, 4 inches bumper to bumper. If I pulled it in at an angle, I could maybe get the overhang down to 3 feet, still blocking the sidewalk, still illegal. But Brenda wanted me to park in my driveway. She had made that very clear. So that is exactly what I did. I pulled my truck into the driveway that afternoon, perfectly centered, nose touching the garage door. The tailgate extended 4 feet past the property line, completely blocking the sidewalk. Not partially, not inconveniently, completely. If you were walking down the sidewalk, you had to step into the street to get around it. I parked it there and went inside. It took less than an hour. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating dinner when I heard the knock. Aggressive, loud, insistent. I opened the door to find Brenda standing on my porch, face red, breathing hard. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Parking in my driveway," I said calmly, like you asked. "You are blocking the sidewalk, I know," I said. "My truck does not fit in the driveway without blocking it. I tried to explain that to you. That is illegal," she shouted. "Yes," I agreed, "it is. Section 18-157 of the Municipal Code. But you told me to park in my driveway, so I did." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You know what I meant?" "I know what you said," I corrected. "You said park in the driveway." "I am parked in the driveway. Park it properly," she yelled. There is no way to park it properly in a driveway that is 6 feet shorter than the vehicle, I said, which is why I was parking on the street, which is legal. She stood there vibrating with anger. Then she pointed at me. I am calling the city tomorrow. You are getting a citation for this. Okay, I said, and closed the door. I left the truck in the driveway for 3 days. During that time, I counted 8 people who had to walk around it, mostly neighbors out for evening walks, one woman with a stroller who shot me a dirty look as she stepped into the street. One older man who muttered something I could not quite hear but definitely was not complimentary, and Brenda, who walked past at least twice a day, staring at the truck like it had personally insulted her. On the 4th day, I got a visit from the city. A code enforcement officer, mid-40s, wearing a polo shirt with the Jefferson County logo, pulled up in a white sedan and walked up to my door. His name tag said Rodriguez, Mr. Mitchell, he asked. That is me. I am here about a complaint regarding a vehicle blocking the sidewalk. Yeah, I said. That would be my truck. Come take a look. We walked around to the driveway. He pulled out a measuring tape and confirmed that the truck was, in fact, extending into the pedestrian right-of-way. This is a violation, he said, making notes on a tablet. You cannot obstruct the sidewalk. I know, I said. That is why I usually park on the street. But a neighbor complained about that and told me to park in my driveway. He looked up from his tablet. Who told you that? Brenda Kowalczyk, 3 houses down. She left multiple notes on my truck and confronted me in person. Said street parking was against the rules and I needed to use my driveway. Rodriguez frowned. There is no rule against street parking on residential roads unless posted otherwise. I know, I said. I looked it up, but she insisted, so I parked here. Now she has called you to complain about that. He shook his head slowly. So you are in violation because someone who does not understand the code told you to be in violation. Essentially, yes, he sighed. Mr. Mitchell, I am going to issue a warning for the sidewalk obstruction. You need to move the truck, but I am also going to have a conversation with Miss Kowalczyk about filing complaints for issues that are not actually violations. This is not the first time she has called us about things that are not code violations. Really? I asked. Really? He said. Last month it was someone's lawn being a 1/4 inch too tall, which is not something we enforce. Before that, it was a neighbor's trash cans being visible from the street on a non-collection day, also not a violation. We are getting tired of responding to her calls. He handed me a copy of the warning, told me to move the truck within 24 hours, and left. I moved it back to the street that afternoon. 2 weeks of silence followed. My truck sat on the street. Nobody left notes. Nobody knocked on my door. I started to think maybe Brenda had finally gotten the message. Then I came home from a service call one evening and found her Buick Enclave parked on the street directly in front of my house. Not in front of her house. In front of mine she had 2 open spots in her driveway. Her garage was clearly empty based on the fact that I had never seen it closed, but she had chosen to park on the street, in the spot I usually used, forcing me to park 3 houses down. I sat in my truck for a moment, staring at her car. Then I smiled. If she wanted to play games, I could play games. I pulled out my phone and opened Google Maps Street View. I zoomed in on the fire hydrant at the corner, the one about 60 feet from my house. Then I measured the distance from the hydrant to where Brenda's Buick was parked. 13 feet, maybe 14. Jefferson County Code requires 15 feet clearance from a fire hydrant. She was close. Very close. I called the non-emergency code enforcement line and reported a vehicle parked illegally close to a fire hydrant. Gave them the address, the vehicle description, the license plate. They said they would send someone out. The next morning, there was a bright orange ticket tucked under Brenda's windshield wiper, $180 fine for parking within 15 feet of a hydrant. She moved the car within an hour back to her own driveway. That afternoon, I got a visit. She did not knock this time, she yelled from the sidewalk. You called the city on me. I walked out onto my porch. Your car was parked too close to the hydrant. That is a safety violation. You know damn well I was not blocking anything. The law says 15 feet, I said calmly. You were at 13. That is a violation. This is harassment, she screamed. I am going to report you. For what? I asked, reporting an actual code violation. Feel free. She stood there shaking with rage, then turned and stormed back to her house. I did not see her for several days after that. Then, about a week later, Rodriguez showed up again. Mr. Mitchell, he said when I answered the door. We need to talk. Am I in violation of something? I asked. No, he said, But Miss Kowalczyk has filed 3 more complaints against you this week. Lawn height, trash cans visible from street, and alleged noise disturbance at 6 a.m. when you start your truck. Are any of those valid? I asked. No, he said flatly. Your lawn is fine, trash cans are allowed to be visible, and starting a vehicle at 6 a.m. is not a noise violation unless you are revving the engine excessively, which she admitted you are not. So why are you here? Because I wanted to give you a heads up, he said. We are issuing her a formal warning for filing frivolous complaints. If she continues, she could face fines. But I wanted you to know in case she escalates. Escalates how? I asked. People who get warnings sometimes get angry, he said. Just keep doing what you are doing. You are not violating anything. And if she harasses you, document it and let us know. Understood, I said. He left. I went back inside. 3 days later, Brenda put a for sale sign in her yard. I heard through neighborhood gossip that she had decided to move to a 55-plus community in Highlands Ranch where, quote, people understand how to maintain property values. Her house sold in 6 weeks. I never spoke to her again. The day she moved out, I was at work. When I came home, the yellow split level was empty, the shutters still perfect, the lawn still immaculate. A younger couple moved in 2 months later, early 30s, 2 kids, friendly. They park on the street half the time, so do I. Nobody leaves notes, nobody calls the city, nobody cares. Here is the thing I learned from dealing with Brenda. Some people operate under the belief that their preferences are rules. They see something they do not like, and they assume there must be a regulation against it, because in their mind, things they dislike should be prohibited. When you point out that no such regulation exists, they do not accept that maybe their preference is just a preference. They double down, they demand compliance anyway, they threaten enforcement actions that do not exist. And when you comply with their demands in a way that exposes the flaw in their logic, they get angry. Not at themselves for making unreasonable demands at you, for following those demands too, literally. Brenda wanted me to park in my driveway. I did exactly that, and it created a bigger problem than the one she thought existed. She wanted rules enforced that were not actually rules. So I started enforcing actual rules that she was violating. Did I take some satisfaction in getting her ticketed? Absolutely. She had spent weeks harassing me, leaving notes, calling the city, trying to make my life difficult over something that was completely legal and normal. But I also did not escalate beyond what was justified. I reported an actual violation. I documented harassment. I followed the law precisely. Some people say I should have just moved my truck and avoided the conflict. That I was being stubborn over something small, that a considerate neighbor would have found a compromise maybe. But here is my counter-argument. I bought a house in a neighborhood without an HOA specifically because I did not want someone dictating where I could park my work truck. I was not violating any laws. I was not creating any actual problems. I was living my normal life. Brenda decided that my normal was unacceptable and tried to force me to change it through intimidation and false claims about regulations. When I pushed back using the actual regulations, she could not handle it. So here's my question for you. Was I wrong to park in the driveway when I knew it would block the sidewalk, even though she had demanded I park there? Was that malicious compliance? Or was that just demonstrating why her demand was unreasonable? And when she parked in front of my house and I reported her for being too close to the hydrant, was that justified enforcement of actual rules, or was that petty revenge? Some people think I was being vindictive, that I should have just let her vent and moved on, that calling the city on her was crossing a line. Others think she got exactly what she deserved, that people who weaponize code enforcement against their neighbors should not be surprised when it gets turned back on them. I think the truth is probably somewhere in between. I was not trying to ruin her life, but I absolutely was not going to let her bully me into following rules that did not exist. And if you have ever dealt with a neighbor who appointed themselves the unofficial enforcer of standards, nobody agreed to, or someone who genuinely believed their aesthetic preferences were legal requirements, I want to hear about it. Because at the end of the day, this was not really about parking. It was about the difference between actual rules and personal preferences. About what happens when someone confuses the two and tries to enforce the latter as if it were the former. And it was about one simple truth that I have learned from 12 years of reading technical manuals and code books. If you are going to demand that someone follow the rules, you better make damn sure you understand what the rules actually say, because the person you are trying to control might understand them better than you do, and when they follow those rules exactly as written, you might not like the result. Street parking is legal. Sidewalk obstruction is not. Fire hydrant clearance is 15 feet, not 13. Those are the rules. And unlike Brenda's preferences, they are actually enforceable.